Hi guys, and welcome to the last episode of Science at Home for now. So like we said previously, in this episode we got you to submit questions, and thank you to everyone who submitted a question, and we've chosen 4 of them that we're going to discuss in today's episode. So let's go take a look at number 1. Okay, so our first question came from Coco, and Coco asks, why can birds sit on electric wires and not get a shock? But if people touch the electric wires, they will get a shock. Why is that? What's so special about birds? Well, if we take a look at an electric wire behind us, just the standard ones you see everywhere, we know they're really dangerous, and we should never touch them. But you'll often see birds sitting on them. Well, the reason for why they don't get a shock has got to do with thinking about how electricity moves. So we're going to take a little look at a battery to understand that. Every battery has a negative and a positive terminal. They always need 2 terminals. Now, this is an LED, it's just a standard type of light we use. If we connect one side of the LED to the negative, nothing happens. If we connect one side of the LED to the positive, nothing happens. But if we connect one to negative and one to positive, boom, we have light. The electricity flows from the negative through the LED to the positive. Okay? So we can see that when we connect them, the electricity flows. If we're only connected to one, it doesn't flow. Okay, so we can see that electricity has to be able to flow between positive and negative terminals. Now, we can look at this electric fence here. It's the exact same principle as those big electric wires behind us, but it probably won't kill me if I touch it. Now, we can think about this wire here as being filled with electrons, just jumping up and down really, really fast. They're just moving around here really fast because it's at a very high voltage. But they can't leave the wire because they're not connected to a negative terminal. Now, if I touch this fence, those electrons will move through my body the whole way to the ground. Okay? Now, the ground is connected to the whole Earth, and it just means there's loads of places for those electrons to go. What I will do is I'll use this metal rod instead of myself so that I don't get a shock. And what we'll see is when I connect this metal rod, which acts as a human being, to this electric fence, we're going to see a shock. We see the electricity jumping from the wire, and it's going to move through this right to the Earth. So when the bird is sitting here, it's not touching the Earth, so it's not giving a path for the electricity. When a person touches it, it's touching the Earth, so it gives a path to the electricity. I hope that answers your question, Coco. Thank you very much. Let's go to the next one. So Dara, aged 8, was wondering why heavy objects and light objects move at different speeds. Well, what you can do is you can think about what objects move through. Whenever you drop an object, it moves through the air. Now, we think of air as being empty space, but it's not. Air is a gas. And moving through a gas is very similar to moving through a liquid. Okay? Have you ever tried to run through a swimming pool? It's really difficult. You can feel a resistance pushing back against you. Well, it's the exact same for something that's moving through the air. Oh, hi Greta. We're just filming an episode, okay? Thank you. Anyway, sorry Dara. So an object that moves through the air feels a resistance just like when you move through a swimming pool. So we've taken 2 identical objects, this brick and this brick, but one of them is going to be not as good at moving through the air because of its shape. So it's only an object's shape that determines how fast it will move. Let's drop the 2 of them from the ladder and see which one falls first. So, as we can see, the speed at which an object falls is just determined by how much it catches the air, a thing called air resistance. Thanks very much for the question, Dara, and let's go have a look at the next question. All right, Ripley, age 6, had a really good question. Ripley wanted to know, what is a black hole and should we be afraid of them? Well, to explain what a black hole is, I'm going to use the same analogy I used in my gravity episode, so make sure you've seen that one. Now, this represents the fabric of space and time, and when this bends, objects are attracted towards that bend. Okay? So, for example, if I put this object in the center, it's going to bend or warp space-time. So it means any other object is going to get attracted towards it, just like gravity. Gravity pulls this object into the center. Okay? Now, if I get a heavier object, it's going to bend or warp space-time even more. And now an object gets attracted super fast. and it's harder for it to escape. Okay? Now, just because an object is big or small doesn't mean it has a lot of gravity. For example, I have a bigger object here, this football, but it's not very heavy. So it's really not going to attract this object very much at all. It only barely attracts it in. So what we need to think about is, try to imagine an object that's as small as this little marble, but 100 times heavier than this metal ball. How would that warp space-time? Well, this metal ball warps it by a certain amount. If we imagine it being heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier, it's going to warp space-time more and more. It sucks everything right in. Nothing can escape. Yeah? And imagine if this metal ball was really, really tiny. Well, then it would be just like this tiny marble being super heavy. The tiny marble just gets pulled down, 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 and everything that goes by gets sucked in. Nothing can escape. So a black hole is like an infinitely small object that's incredibly dense. So it just absolutely makes a huge bend in space-time that attracts everything that comes near it, gets attracted in. So that's what a black hole is. It's just something so heavy and so tiny that everything gets pulled into its gravity. Now, should we be afraid of it? No, we shouldn't be afraid of it, because the nearest black hole is so far away that if we started traveling now, we couldn't even get there in 1,000 lifetimes. So you really don't need to worry about black holes. They're out there in space holding galaxies together, and that's where they should be. We got a question from Dara, age 7, and he wanted to know how thunderstorms are formed. Well, we're all familiar with thunder and lightning, yeah, bangs and flashes up in the clouds. But how does it get there, and what is it? Well, believe it or not, it's all got to do with friction. Yeah, the conditions have to be just right, yeah, warm and humid, and you have lots of air rising and clouds moving around, and you get these clouds rubbing against each other. Okay, so clouds are rubbing against each other. And you know the trick where you rub a balloon against your hair and it gets attracted? It's the same principle. It's called static electricity. So all this friction in the clouds creates static charges, and that's just got to do with the motion of electrons around. So you're going to get clouds that have one charge, yeah, so they could be positively or negatively charged, and that charge can build up and up and up the more friction there is. Eventually, all that electric charge has to go somewhere, yeah. There's air all around it, so it's hard for it to move. But if it gets close enough to the ground, or if the ground gets close enough to it, if there's a tall object, that electricity can jump from the cloud to the ground. And that jump of electricity is a bolt of lightning. And if you remember when I showed the electric fence just there earlier, that little spark you saw was basically a tiny little bolt of lightning. So that's what happens when you have two charged objects getting close to each other. Okay, hope that explained it to you, Dara, and thanks very much for your question. So that's that for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks so much for sending in your questions. We've really enjoyed making this series over the last 12 episodes, and we're really excited to make some more after a short break. So we'll see you all again very soon. Bye bye!